Now, plenty of developments in the UKIP leadership race this weekend, with 7 candidates now having declared their interest in replacing Diane James. In alphabetical order, they are Andrew Beadle, Bill Etheridge, Suzanne Evans, Raheem Kassam, David Curtin, Paul Nuttall and Peter Whittle. Waiting for the pictures to catch up with me there. There you go. Nominations close at midday next Monday. There will be a series of hustings in the first 2 weeks of November, and the new leader will be announced in a month's time on Monday, the 28th of November. Over the weekend, 3 of the more prominent candidates were out and about on the airwaves, and here's what they had to say.
I think I'm absolutely the right person to champion the cause of those 17.4 million people who voted to leave the European Union and now seeing their democratic choice being undermined by the political class. So I absolutely want to be their champion. We're seeing hundreds of MPs trying to overturn the verdict. We're seeing activist lawyers trying to undermine the will of the people. And, I want to say to them, don't you dare.
My job has been to be a very combative journalist. My job has been to be a little bit out there, a little bit, get some attention, things like that. But nowadays, 21st century, we live our lives in short bursts. I've been a journalist, I've been a think tanker, I've been a comms director, I've worked for Nigel Farage. Right. You move on. And you can be different people in your life. I haven't sat here my whole life and gone, I want to aspire to be a politician and therefore I'm going to carry myself like a PC robot. I've been a normal human being.
I have huge support out there across the country, not only amongst people at the top of the party in Westminster and with the MEPs, but also amongst the grassroots. And I want to stand on a platform of being the unity candidate. UKIP needs to come together. I'm not going to be on here and gild the lily. UKIP at the moment is looking over the edge of a political cliff. It will either step off or it will step back, and I want to be the candidate that will tell us to come backwards.
Some of UKIP's leadership candidates touring the TV studios yesterday. And we're joined now by prominent Welsh UKIP activist John Rees Evans. Welcome to the programme. Are you going to declare and be the 8th candidate for the leadership?
Yes, today I've come on here to declare that I am standing for the candidacy of the leadership of UKIP.
Right. I mean, viewers, not many viewers will know you. You're not exactly a household name. So tell us a little bit about yourself. OK, well, I'm an entrepreneur with a background in mountaineering, and my business mostly relates to kind of adventurous tourism. But I've been a strong supporter of the work of UKIP since the early 1990s. And in fact, I only became a member fairly recently because in the past I was perfectly happy to play a background supportive role. Right. Why background?
Because I believed that there were talented people there who were capable of doing what was necessary to be done, as proven by the fact that we did indeed get this referendum, and we did prove that over half the country supports our basic foundational premise. Right.
I mean, because, as you have admitted yourself, you're not that well known, you've stayed in the background, we have obviously done some research on you. A Vice News profile of you last year said you're a survival expert who, when you once visited an IKEA in Bulgaria, persuaded a sales assistant to let you carry your Glock handgun in case terrorists lay siege to the building. Is this true?
No, the chap who wrote that, great guy, but that is an embellishment. I mean, he's writing for an audience that really appreciates kind of exaggerated journalism.
Which bit's exaggerated, just to make it clear to our audience?
OK, so on that particular day, I was doing some training, which is quite normal in Bulgaria. I do IPSC, which is competitive speed pistol shooting.
Right.
Of course, I was trained by the British Army to operate weapons. It's a waste of taxpayer money if I don't maintain those skills, of course. And I have access to Bulgaria.
But did you have the gun on you when you went into the store?
Well, yes. In fact, I did, because it simply wasn't safe to hand it over to the security, and I had some things that I had to get. Now, in fact, that little story about, laying siege to a building, quite simply, they said to me the reason they don't allow weapons to go in there is because in case there were an attack. And I said, surely you want law-abiding people to be armed if people are going to come in here and attack you.
Right. I mean, some people might think that's quite an extreme position to hold in terms of carrying arms, although you have explained why. The profile also says you're building a secure compound in Bulgaria in case of a global meltdown, featuring a church, a leisure complex, a firing range and a watchtower that will double as a diving platform. Lots of detail there. Do you think you might struggle to convince enough UK voters that you are the man to lead UKIP?
Do you know, Joe, I really respect what you're doing. I don't know who's assisted you with these questions.
It wasn't difficult to find this information.
But with all due respect, I believe that people are actually interested in why I'm standing and the vision that I have. What I would say is that story was entirely exaggerated. If you have property and there are animals around, of course you'll secure the perimeter of your property. I mean, a secure compound simply means a garden with a wall, which I'm sure you have if you have a garden.
I do have a garden. I don't secure it in quite that way. But I suppose you're going for the leadership of UKIP. People will want to know about you and what sort of person you are, and these reveal you in a certain way, and viewers can make up their own mind. What do you actually want to do with UKIP if you win the contest?
OK, so the situation we have is that UKIP is at a very clear crossroads, and there are two paths that it can take. Now, it's my understanding that all of the other candidates are essentially jostling to take UKIP down a given path. Now, that path may look obvious, it may look straightforward, but the end result of that path is that UKIP is going to end up as just another political party where people work themselves into positions of power so as to be able to pursue their own agendas rather than represent the will of the people. Now, what I'm proposing to do with UKIP is entirely different. I am proposing to transfer power from the leadership to the membership. I believe in a process known as direct democracy, where the leadership doesn't have any authority to move the party in any direction it wants to go without direct consent, demonstrably, from the people.
Do you think with that platform you're going to beat some of the more established candidates like Paul Nuttall, Suzanne Evans, Raheem Kassam?
You know, it all depends on whether people in media are willing to actually listen to my ideas or whether they want to trivialise it with stories like this chap has come up with.
I'm not sure it's trivialising it, and you've answered those questions that have been raised in that profile, as well as setting out your stall. Let's talk about one of the other candidates, and we'll come back to you in just a moment. Gisela Stewart, Paul Nuttall has spoken of his experience of winning over Labour voters in the north of England. Would he be the man you'd be most worried about?
I think Labour's got a challenge in those areas where, particularly those traditional areas where they wouldn't dream, if they're disillusioned with the Labour Party, wouldn't dream of voting for the Tories, and therefore the UKIP would be a fallback position. But what I think what Labour voters would look for is whether there's anything out there which actually improves their living conditions and improves their skills. And I just don't see at the moment that the UKIP programme is really that seductive.
Right, and what about you? I mean, the Conservatives at the moment, I suppose, arguably, we could be saying, did we worry too much about UKIP a few years ago when you look at the infighting that has broken out in the party now?
In my party?
Well, no, in UKIP's party. I was saying, did you worry too much about UKIP as a threat to your party?
I don't think it was a worry about UKIP. I think that there was a completely legitimate sense that the public had been promised a referendum on the EU issue, and then it had been taken away, and we had to deal with that issue. And I still think that was the right thing to do, even though the result was not the one we want, because I'm a Democrat. I think that Theresa May, both in pledging that we will respect that result and implement the Leave vote, and in mounting a broad appeal to the whole country, a country that works for everyone, in her words, is taking the ground from under the feet of parties like UKIP. What is the point of UKIP when the public have voted to leave the EU? And we have a Prime Minister who has pledged that we will now implement that.
Right, well, what is the point of UKIP then?
OK, well, can I please just summarise my understanding of the situation with UKIP and tell you what my vision is moving forward?
Briefly,
okay,
yes.
OK, because right now, I won't deny the fact that there is infighting. The situation you have with UKIP is that you have fighters, you have freedom fighters without an enemy. They've just won the last battle. And I can tell you in my own personal experience, when fighters don't have a common enemy, they end up turning on each other. OK, in Parachute Regiment, people are going out during the week, working hard, doing challenges together. They're united. On the weekend, with nothing particularly to do, they end up fighting with each other. It's very common with fighters. Now, UKIP is a party of fighters. And what I'm proposing to do is to direct all of that aggression towards the enemy.
And the enemy is?
The enemy is any kind of politics in Britain that doesn't represent the will of the people. The politics that puts people into positions of power to pursue their own agendas rather than the agenda that the British people give them, the mandate the British people give them.
Let me push a bit further on some of your background, because you were strongly criticised for the way you were asked to respond to a claim made by another UKIP candidate, this was in the run-up to the general election, that some homosexuals prefer sex with animals. You did so by talking about how a gay donkey tried to rape your horse. Do you still stand by that?
Do you know, Joe, it's really interesting what you're doing, because I'm trying to tell you my serious vision for UKIP, and you keep trivialising it. But look,
was that just a trivial point?
It was a bit of playful banter with a mischievous activist. OK?
Right.
Now, look, I would be so appreciative if you could please just understand the concept that I'm trying to communicate to your viewers, and that is that according to the plan that I have for UKIP, UKIP is going to grow. Right now, there's very little reason to join UKIP. I wouldn't be surprised if we had fewer than 25,000 members, and yet 17.4 million people in this country have essentially said they agree with our basic premise.
Right, but are those the sort of answers that you would give as leader of the party, even in a frivolous way?
No, I concede it was a mistake to be playful with an activist in a street. The fact is, I'm not a politician. You know, the guy was just asking me questions in the street. It was an error of judgment. You know, I was very early coming into politics, and yeah, I'm sorry if I offended anyone by doing that, but please can we move on?
Right. Shouldn't Theresa May be thinking of calling a snap election?
Well, she said that she wouldn't during the leadership contest, and in doing so, she would be exchanging the certainty of another 3.5 years.
It would
of
give
a fixed-term
it would give her a
parliament.
mandate, though, wouldn't it, for the Brexit negotiations?
Well, she has a mandate from the British people that we are going to leave. So although I can see that while the party remains so far ahead in the polls that it might be a temptation, that would be the question, which is why run the risk of going for another 5 years when you already have 3.5 with a workable majority.
All right. John Rees Evans, thank you very much.
Thank you.